that mathematics is the language of the universe. Could it be that these precise geometric designs are, in fact, trying to tell us something? Some believe these intricate patterns could be a warning, but a warning of what and from whom? We will attempt to find the answers to these and a host of other questions when we return. In the late 1970s, something truly amazing began to happen in the crop-rich countryside of England. Reports of circles being pressed into standing crops began to trickle in from the agricultural areas where much of England's cereal grains are grown. They were just simple circles to begin with, but as the frequency of the reports increased, so did the size and intricacy of the markings in the fields. What's more, in spite of the fact that some of these circles were so large they could only be fully viewed from high in the air, they had the disturbing quality of appearing fully formed overnight. Who or what could noiselessly and in the dark cut huge images into a field of living grain without damaging the crop and leave a precise geometric impression only fully visible from an airplane? There were many people who thought that question was being answered by other reports that began coming in about the same time. Reports of silvery discs flying or hovering low over the open countryside, and apparently these objects were seen in great number.
The town of Warminster has gained the reputation as the UFO capital of England. The sheer number of sightings in that area since 1964 has been nothing short of staggering. One particular phenomenon we've been watching with interest has been the sightings of a spherical object that seems to glow amber, orange, or gold. There have been quite a number of sightings of that kind of this object.
But those sightings were often only the beginning of the mystery. According to eyewitness accounts, with the first rays of the next morning's sun came astonishing evidence of the previous night's encounter with the unknown, and so far unexplained. Someone or something left an area of the field flattened, pressed down into perfect geometric shapes.
The crops aren't cut, they're not broken. They've been carefully and systematically swirled flat to the ground.
Over the years, these patterns have proven to be more than just random design. They are, in fact, perfect circles, ovals, or circles with rings, and sometimes circles, rings, and satellites. So we are left with a haunting possibility that if there is a connection between the circular objects and the mysterious imprints left in the fields, these so-called crop circles may be the most positive evidence yet of alien visitors to our planet. But can we be sure the crop circles and UFOs are related?
Almost from the beginning, crop circles have appeared in association with the report of aerial phenomena. In the most extreme cases, people have reported beams of light touching ground level, where crop circles have been later discovered, or indeed in many cases, the little balls of orange light dancing over the field, and on occasions, literally appearing in the fields. These sightings have often been followed by discoveries of the crop circles.
This is, of course, important circumstantial evidence of a connection between the crop markings and the aerial phenomena. But it is only circumstantial. Are there other reasons to believe these symbols in the fields were made by UFOs?
The characteristics of the crop circles, the bent stems, and the lack of damage, the idea that they've been produced by some kind of scanner, which we haven't got, which I discovered from my research, and the fact that their timings related to the UFO activity all point to an intelligence which is not human.
And I'm convinced that the wisdom and skill and understanding embodied in these formations is of a very high order indeed.
Could it be that the answer will be found in sites like these, where witnesses claim UFOs have landed?
There have been a number of ground traces that have been found both here in Pennsylvania and throughout the world. Some of these traces indicate circular areas, ring-shaped areas, ovals, irregular sites. In some cases you have the top of the area that's been burnt and charred. In some cases soil and plant life has been removed.
J. Allen Hynek, the father of modern UFO research, reported witnessing a flying saucer landing site in Canada that was suspiciously like the classic crop circle. All 5 of these objects rose straight up as though on a signal, and where each one had been was a 9-foot circle of matted down grass. Does this mean that all such strange circles in the grass have been created by a UFO? Or is there another, more likely explanation that would describe all of these phenomena?
The official explanation from the British government is that these crop circles are actually formed by the wind. Well, presumably we are led to believe that this is a rigorous wind system which etches the crop circles into the fields. The British government's whirlwind theory appears to have been accepted by everybody concerned, particularly, I think, the public. But bearing in mind, it in no way fulfills the mechanism which actually forms a whirlwind, i.e. they are formed by thermal inductance and appear during the daylight and or in the lee of a hill. In southern England, we have very few hills, and most of the crop circles appear at night.
Wind, however, is not the only weather factor that has been suggested as a natural cause for the formation of crop circles. The BLT Research Team Incorporated, a group of scientists headquartered in the U.S. but doing research worldwide on this phenomenon, has a slightly different idea.
The most reasonable hypothesis that we've been able to come up with is that an atmospheric plasma, an air mass of highly charged electrical particles, is descending down towards the Earth's surface, and when it impacts in a crop field, what you get is in fact a crop circle. A lightning discharge is another example of a plasma form. The northern lights are another one. Science until recently did not think that plasmas came down as low as the Earth's actual surface, but not too many years ago they discovered sprites, and sprites occur at 6 miles up. So there's more and more evidence that perhaps plasmas can in fact impact the Earth's surface.
So are we to believe that a whirlwind, a wind of any kind, can form a pattern like this? Look at the way the grain is being woven and these precisely well-deformed edges. Well, no whirlwinds did these things, and it's absolute madness to pretend they did.
Natural phenomena cannot explain crop circles because they simply started 20-odd years ago. Mother Nature is not best known for inventing new phenomena.
I don't believe they can all be created through natural phenomena, simply because I've witnessed a number of first-hand anomalies on bits of electrical equipment that wouldn't be caused by just randomly downed crop or shapes. One experience I had a few years ago, I had a mobile phone that I was trying to use in a crop circle, and it completely refused to work at all. And I went to the edge of the crop circle, at the time I thought it had been zapped or something, and I held it like this and it went up to full signal strength, and I put it back in and it just went completely no signal. And I repeated this, at the time I was fairly sceptical, and I repeated this a number of times and literally went right round the exact shape of the crop circle, and it completely refused to work inside, and yet it worked full signal strength outside the circle. So that was one event that personally convinced me there was something worth investigating.
The sheer number of circles being reported every year has forced many governments to take note of these amazing occurrences. But what have governments, by and large, done to identify the source of the circles? Could it be the entire phenomenon has been the result of clever fakery? And since no one appears to be gaining great fame and fortune for their effort, why would anyone bother to do it? No one denies that the artistry and geometric precision of the crop circles are truly amazing. The answer that seems to elude every question is, how on earth can it be done on such a grand scale, in so many different places, and always in a single night? Does this mean that UFOs piloted by some sort of intelligence are the only answer? Actually, there are a variety of other theories about where the crop markings come from. One of the most inventive explanations suggests the markings are being made by the satellite-based weapon system developed for the American Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI.
There is a theory that the SDI program The government themselves are actually employing high-tech equipment in space to etch into the fields of southern England and other parts of the world patterns of this kind. There are two reasons why I don't believe it's even a starter. We had reports of this phenomena in 1946 in the same field as we have them today. We didn't have the technology up there when they were first appearing. And the second, I think the most major point, is that these patterns could be laid into the fields of secure areas of military establishments. We have large areas in central southern England. It'd be very simple to lay them in those areas. But these are appearing in public areas. Some of them are actually crossing major highways. I cannot begin to conceive of any Western government employing such technology in such an irresponsible manner.
Technology can't possibly explain the existence of crop circles, because while the technology might be available, the social backup to that technology is impossible to conceive. Who would spend fortunes on a technology that bends over the stalks of crop?
There are even those who have put the theory forward that these things are formed by mating hedgehogs or porcupines rolling around in the field.
Are any of these theories any more credible than the suggestion that the crop circles are formed by UFOs or some kind of aerial technology? Of course, all of them overlook a much simpler possibility. Could these patterns just be a matter of an outright hoax? In 1990, two Englishmen came forward with a confession. They had, they told the world, personally created the crop circles. The men, Doug Bauer and David Charley, were even eager to demonstrate their technique for cameras. The method was simplicity itself. Put a board under one foot, attached to a rope to hold it against your foot, tie yourself to a center point, and begin walking around in circles. Nothing to it. But if Doug and Dave did do all of the crop circles as they claimed, how did they get from England to America to Russia and back? How did they make as many as 15 circles in one night? How did they overlap the stalks without breaking them? If indeed this is the answer to the origin of the crop circles, how on earth did they do it?
Remember in the fall of 1991 when these two gentlemen in southern England were trotted out on the world media as the explanation for the crop circle mystery? Two guys who claim they did it all. And for some reason, the worldwide network media accepted that as an explanation.
In 1991, Doug and Dave claimed to have created all the crop circles, and I for one don't believe this claim. I've interviewed Doug myself, and you ask him certain questions and you'll get the wrong answers. And not only did they claim a number of crop circles, and we've got up to 30 logged on one night as appearing all around the country, which they couldn't physically have travelled to, but also various patterns and things, details on the ground that we found don't tally in with their story. And it's interesting to see that the media completely went for this story, flashed it around the world and didn't published it as all a hoax, and no one's taken the chance to actually go and research this and actually look into the truth of what really happened.
According to them, they had boards which they pushed down across the crane, and they just kept walking around in circles or rings or whatever until they'd made the shapes they wanted. The whole thing was all a big practical joke.
There simply is no way that just two men could have possibly constructed all of these patterns, appearing on occasions 15 per day, without getting caught at it. If hoaxers went out during the middle of the night just to make this, how on earth would they have possibly constructed a pattern like Barbary Castle during the shortest night of the British summer? It would have taken a team of hoaxers days to have constructed this, and it appeared simply overnight.
What people don't realize is that before 1991 and since 1991, that there have been scientists, biophysicists, who have been studying plants from formations in England, Canada, the United States, Australia, and other parts of the world, and have found that there are fundamental biochemical and biophysical changes at the respiratory cell level and the cell pit level of plants that cannot be hoaxed.
Crop circles, like UFOs, are a worldwide phenomenon. The U.S. and Canada, Australia, Japan, they're all over the place. I heard some reports about them in the Soviet Union as well, in the former Soviet Union. They're a worldwide phenomenon, and the idea that two old English barflies are flying all over the world creating these things is patently ridiculous.
And there's another aspect to the circles that suggests, shall we say, more comprehensive planning. Many crop circle experts say that the markings in the fields are perfect geometric figures, often accurate to less than 1/4 of an inch.
The difference between wind damage, hoaxing, and genuine patterns, the wind damage is very obvious. It's just a very random falling of the crop in the fields. There's no particular structure to it. The hoaxing ones very often look absolutely brilliant from the air, but when you put them up on a computer, you can see that the geometry is inaccurate. They just never get it correct. In the genuine ones, the geometry is awesome. They may be 1,000 foot in diameter. It's absolutely flawless. It is hugely accurate.
Yet, is it not possible that all of the crop markings really are hoaxes?
In 1993, a crop circle making contest was held, sponsored by the Guardian newspaper, which is a kind of equivalent of Sirius newspaper of the New York Times. It was under the supervision of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a scientist. And at the end of the day, the 11 contestants, or at least 4 or 5 of them, produced reasonable imitations of crop circles. But what does this prove? If I gave you a $20 bill and convinced you that I had hoaxed it, would you forever refuse to take American currency? Does this invalidate the US economy? I don't think so.
Even if Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley didn't make all of the circles, might not the real culprit be hundreds of hoaxers all over the world?
People that believe crop circles were made by human beings are overlooking some very important features of the crop circles. They are interwoven and intricately laid, not at all the way that they would be crushed to the ground if people stamped them.
Chemical analysis of grain from a field where a crop circle had appeared suggests another change that no human hands could have made.
Crop samples from formations in England, New York State, and Vancouver, British Columbia were subjected to some kind of energy which rapidly heated the plants. Even more puzzling are the soil changes in a large oval shape found August 1st near Beckhampton, England. Analysis by nuclear systems designer Marshall Dudley and Duke University student Michael Kurost revealed the presence of 10 unusual and short-lived radionuclides in the samples that are not found in normal plants. These are not naturally occurring radionuclides. They must be synthesized in either cyclotrons or fusion reactors. Dudley and Kurost said, finding such isotopes in soil samples from a rural England field is profoundly surprising. There's a complex of energies that are being focused on these plants, and that implies some kind of an advanced technology. If there's an advanced technology being applied to cereal crops worldwide, including rice paddies in Japan, the big question is, whose technology and why?
In 1993, shortly after the Perseid meteor shower, a formation occurred in Wiltshire, England, at a place called Chur Hill. The formation had a glaze or a coating on some of the plants and some of the tiny swirls. What we discovered was that this was absolutely pure iron, and we realized that what we were looking at was a deposit of probably meteoritic dust. Since then, we have begun looking in the soils very aggressively, and we find multiple cases, in fact the majority of cases, where we have 50 to 100 micron diameter beads. These are tiny little spheres of pure iron deposited inside the crop circles and not outside.
Every plant on Earth has a distinctive energy pattern, and we have looked closely and compared the energy pattern of plants inside the crop circle with those outside as controls in the general area. And this was a non-conventional plant analysis process, but they nonetheless secured a starch crystal from a single plant inside a single crop circle and discovered that looking through a microscope, the lattice structure was very different to anything they had ever seen before.
Most people think that applying science to mysteries will dispel them. In this case, it's making it a better mystery than it was to begin with.
The best scientific evidence to date that I'm getting, this is a 3-year study on changes in the hormone levels. We test people before they go into a crop circle, and we test them again after they've been inside. And we're seeing dramatic changes in the pineal gland. The melatonin level is rising. Also the thyroid, that seems to be quite dramatically affected. So do the adrenals. Now, the adrenals maybe aren't too surprising because they are our flight and fight mechanism, so they're going to react very quickly. But the thyroid is quite another thing. This indicates that not only is the pineal gland affected, but also the pituitary gland, and this indicates that our whole endocrine system is being affected, and our endocrine system really dictates our emotional and physical behavior. This is very important stuff.
What we found with scientific instruments is that there are specific sound frequencies which are measurable, which are actually affecting the brainwave pattern of people who enter these formations. This is why when people go into crop circles, they could see visions or they have a heightened sense of awareness, precisely because it's those frequencies which are affecting them.
Converting into music certainly gives some interesting results. Seems to indicate that there's almost some sort of communication or something embedded in the crop circle, other than just a random flattening or hoax shapes or whatever. And if there's a message, I think the music could be a key to decoding this message.
Applying science to crop circle research is not attempted by everyone, but in the case of the BLT research team, it is their primary focus.
The way the work is done is that we take many hundreds of samples inside the crop circles and an equal number or slightly less control samples outside. We then compare the two groups of plants to see what we see. What we find are enlarged cell wall pits in the crop circle plants, lengthened nodes, markedly lengthened, sometimes 200 and some % over the control nodes. We find holes blown out at the nodes, which we never see in the standing crop outside. And we also get germination abnormalities.
If the crop markings do form mathematically precise geometric symbols, and if the plants inside have been laid in extremely complex patterns, and the organic structure of the plants has been chemically altered, have we finally found indisputable evidence of some superhuman force at work?
There's definite evidence that there's a very high intelligence behind the crop circles, simply because some of the mathematical shapes and symbols that we're getting in the crops, when you actually analyse them, they're actually starting to give sort of new or continuing science.
For me, the crop circles are an awakening of sorts. They're a reminder that we're part of a higher process in the universe. We're not alone, which also corresponds to a lot of Hopi prophecies, a lot of Aboriginal prophecies, and they're all coinciding at this particular point in time.
I think the message crop circles are giving us is for everyone to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions and investigate things rather than just taking verbatim what they read in textbooks, read in the newspapers or see on television.
We may not yet be sure who the real crop circle makers are, and we may not yet know how or why the crop circles were made. But if there is a secret message in crop circles, we may be very close to decoding that message. Mostly, the experts seem to agree that the message is good. Could it be that this is just the good news we've been waiting for? News we need badly, and just in time. In 1972, in a wheat field near Warminster, England, two men encountered what would become a worldwide mystery, unexplained to this day. They said they saw wheat being forced down in a clockwise direction by some force they couldn't see. Later, a simple, elegant circle, some 30 feet in diameter, was found in the pressed wheat plants. Now, nearly 3 decades and more than 9,000 formations later, crop circles have grown into complex mathematical fractals in lengths up to 3/4 of a mile, and they can be found in most countries around the globe. Does this suggest some otherworldly origin and a technology that is beyond our grasp? Or is there other scientific data to suggest a more terrestrial and less extraterrestrial explanation? And what, if anything, is the official government, or should we say government's, reaction to all of this? The amazing answers in just a moment. Over the years, these patterns have proven to be more than just random design. They are, in fact, perfect circles, ovals, or sometimes circles, rings, and satellites. Along with this amazing growth in the numbers and the size of crop circles has come a corresponding growth in the number of admitted hoaxers, aided and abetted in some instances by major American and British TV networks. In one notable instance, a crop circle contest was held, sponsored by The Guardian, Germany's PM magazine, and under the direction of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. Experts were called in from among the various crop circle study groups to judge the final product of the participants. A winner was chosen and given an appropriate prize. Does this prove then that the circles are in fact the work of hoaxers?
If I gave you a $20 bill and I convinced you that it was hoaxed, would you thereafter refuse ever to accept a $20 bill? Does this invalidate the whole of the US currency?
Good point. But since the circles appear to do no harm, the crop itself isn't even damaged, why do we care how they come about? The contest judges can only evaluate the resulting work as a sort of oversized art form. Are there more important things to consider? For example, many experts investigating the crop circle sites have detected evidence of intense microwave radiation not present in ordinary fields. Could it be that our increased use of microwave technology has somehow affected standing crops? After all, we currently use microwaves in applications ranging from cooking to telecommunications. Is it not possible that by some strange set of circumstances, microwaves such as those used for carrying telephone messages could have somehow struck the ground instead of their receiving station? This would account for the silent and instantaneous arrival of the crop circle. Or is there something else involved with the crop circle phenomenon? Could it be a highly scientific messaging system using the universal language of mathematics? And what do we do about photographs such as this? Hundreds of eyewitnesses have seen objects such as this in close proximity to crop circles, or near a place where a crop circle would later be found. And why is it government resources are frequently employed to discourage or harass people in an attempt to keep them away from the formations?
Well, I arrived at a field overlooking a wheat field, in fact, where there was a major crop circle at a place called Alton Barnes, very close to Stonehenge in England. There were 8 of us, scientists and engineers, some of whom are employed by the US government here. And what happened, at great surprise, out of absolutely nowhere, swooped a large British military army helicopter, bristling with technology, as of course many of them of course are. But he came in very, very close to us. We had no idea what he was up to at the time. We thought maybe initially that he was taking photographs of the crop circles that were already there. But he came to within, I would estimate, 40 feet of our heads, and there was nothing short, it was nothing short of harassment. I think there was a major attempt to move us out of that area. I had no idea why they would want to do that, because I've lived there for 48 years. As if one wasn't enough, and the downdraft literally was pushing the hedge row alongside onto our vehicle, a second one swooped in behind him. These army helicopters were pushing us, attempting to push us out of the area. As we moved up the highway, as a public highway close to this field, they followed us behind the hedgerow. But then we stopped, and one of them moved away rapidly from us over the top of this large pattern and moved up to approach a small sphere of light, pulsing. I would estimate it was probably 18 inches or so in diameter, pulsing, and the helicopter came right up to it. It couldn't possibly have missed seeing it, and in one frame of the film has simply disappeared and is now behind the helicopter. The helicopter appears to maneuver itself on its own axis to get a better view of this, because it's been now behind it. The second helicopter is in touch, of course, by radio control, by radio communications, and it's being told to back its helicopter up as opposed to turn it. You can see he changes his mind and reverses his helicopter until this ball of light is now right in front of him again. And it simply disappears. With that, they hung around the area for just a few more minutes, and both of them made away. It is obviously an assumption. If I were pushed hard on what I thought they were doing, I would be, I think, forced to say that it seemed as if we were unwelcome. We had walked into an area where they were already engaged in something involving this very small ball of light, which we have not only had reported to us many times by people in that area. 2 major patterns were already in the field, and the following day a number of more major patterns appeared in that same area.
What is it that the government of the United States knows and wants to keep us, the public, at a complete arm's length distance from? If they have an understanding of what type or types of non-human intelligence are interacting with our planet, I'm nervous about the fact that they have kept a policy of silence, disinformation, and ridicule on phenomena that they themselves have been studying intimately for 50 years.
Since the beginning of the 1990s, the overnight appearance of crop markings has increased exponentially. Scarcely a day goes by that a new formation is not reported somewhere in the world. Even more amazing have been the changes in the patterns, from simple circles and rings to markings that are, with each new report, growing in size and complexity. More importantly, the phenomenon has shown intelligent reaction to the theories of the researchers. When it was said freak winds on hillsides caused the circles, the crop circles moved to flat, open areas. When men armed with planks of wood were suggested as the culprits, the circles developed in canola, one of the most brittle plants possible. If balloons were said to have been the means of making the circles, they would suddenly appear directly under wires. At the height of the hoaxing, an American tourist etched out in huge letters on the side of a hill, "Talk to us." The answer came back a few days later, when a most bizarre-looking formation resembling Hebrew script appeared at Milk Hill.
The Milk Hill script is unusual as a crop circle, primarily because it doesn't look like a crop circle. It's actually the closest that the circle makers have actually used to a significant language form that we can recognize. Now, this language form was actually analyzed by 12 scientists using 40,000 different permutations or words, and using every conceivable language known to mankind. What they finally came up with was 2 words that were written in a very unusual form of Latin, and also written in the fields in a Freemasonic script. This is a special alphabet that was designed by the Freemasons as a form of communication, at least eight centuries ago. The meaning of these glyphs was that they actually came up as 2 different words, and the words read apono astos, which translated into English means we are opposed to cunning and deceit. Now, this is very significant because at the time that Milk Hill script appeared, it was 1992. This was at the height of the hoaxing, just after Doug and Dave manifested through the media. So it's quite a significant message considering the time in which it came.
There is no doubt in my mind that the crop circle makers are remarkably intelligent. I've been teaching geometry, architecture and design for my whole professional life, and the markings I see in the crops embody a wisdom and understanding and a skill beyond my wildest imaginings. We are getting levels of inventiveness and continuing creativity which I believe is beyond human capacity.
But if these images are being created by visitors from other planets, it represents a major change. It has always been the assumption that these visitors wanted to keep out of sight. Now they are deliberately leaving their fingerprints all over the crime scene. Why? Why would visitors from another world suddenly want us to know of their presence here? Is this all evidence that someone is trying to communicate with us? If communication is the goal, what is the message? And if there is a clearly identifiable message, where does it come from? And what does it mean to you and me, to our future, and to the future of the world? After thousands of crop markings around the world and nearly 30 years of serious research, the crop circles are still a mystery. And in spite of a host of copycat pranksters and hoaxers, their work still has only superficial resemblance to the originals. Careful and serious analysis of all formations clearly identifies specific differences that sets the authentic apart from the imitation. The internal crystalline structure of affected plants, highly unusual polyembryonic development within the grain, bizarre aerial phenomena observed around authentic sites, plant spirals layered alternately clockwise and counterclockwise. These and other anomalies help researchers determine which circles can be described as genuine and which are labeled as hoaxes. And current evidence seems to suggest that crop circles are created by some sort of aerial phenomenon. But much of what we've learned about the formation of crop circles has been based on eyewitness testimony.
A young woman told us about a globe-shaped UFO from which came a beam of light she described as being brighter than white. A beam of light which struck down across the dark sky into a field near the ancient man-made mound of Silbury Hill, a 6,000-year-old mound. And in that field was discovered the next morning a Celtic cross pattern of crop circles.
Eyewitnesses to crop circles forming are relatively rare, but a young man in the Netherlands witnessed 3 forming last summer in a field directly behind his house. What he saw in the first case was a pinkish-purple football-shaped light come in over the field around 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. It then became stationary. He saw it expand, and there was some sort of a discharge from it down to the crop surface. He explained it to me like the shuttle. He went out into the field immediately, and the ground was still hot to his touch, and there was a crackling noise in the air.
Several people claim to have witnessed the formation of crop circles and state they did not see any silver discs or globes or tubes floating in the sky above them. In fact, all they saw was absolutely nothing that was causing this effect. There was no whirlwind or anything like that. And so it truly seemed that the stalks of grain were simply falling over of their own accord.
We have more than 70 reports worldwide of people who claim to have seen things form. People describe frequently a buzzing sound. They will see the plants oscillating, whiplashing, and suddenly the effect takes place. And in less than 15 seconds, like opening up a fan, a cooling fan, the plants are swirled and are lying to the ground. Many people describe seeing glowing lights, beams of light entering the area. Some describe as the golden ball of light enters the area, a loud explosion, a loud retort, a bang, at the same time as this particular effect takes place.
Do these experiences with some unseen force tend to enhance the idea of UFOs being the investigators? Why would a UFO leave such a visible sign of its being there and then just disappear? On the other hand, we have many reports of people watching UFOs do that very thing, just simply vanish. Or is there some reason why the crop markings must be made without its source being detected? Perhaps the only real evidence people would believe, would have to come from a team of recognized experts who have actually witnessed the formation of a crop marking.
The Centre for Crop Circle Studies kept a close watch on the English countryside throughout the summer of 1991. On June the 22nd, 3 of the observers spotted a glowing orange or golden ball hovering in the sky, then moving away at a fantastic speed. Unfortunately, there were no crop markings that appeared on that night, but other markings had appeared on other occasions within just 1 kilometre of that location.
Colin Andrews and his surveillance team were more fortunate.
We set up a sophisticated surveillance operation in 1991 in which we deployed radar, low-light cameras, infrared, and we even stationed some dogs from a nearby farm in the field there. We secured the whole field with security, intruder infrared beams, and we're convinced that no human being, certainly, could enter that area without us knowing about it. But early that morning, we had fog formed, and without any effect on any of the equipment, no radar returns whatsoever, from the center of that fog as it melted away was indeed this intricate pattern.
Is that the purpose of the crop markings, just to be seen? Or is there some message for humankind?
As the years have gone by, the crop markings have been changing. They've been becoming increasingly complex and increasingly pictographic. In fact, many people now refer to all crop markings as agriglyphs, which simply means crop writings.
If these are deliberately made symbols, it is logical to believe they have a specific meaning.
This is extraterrestrial, and this is communication.
But if these are messages, an attempt to communicate with us through mathematics or art, what is it the messages are trying to say? And is there any way to decipher the code?
Many people believe that the meaning of the markings is related to the place where they are found. For example, in England, the vast majority of the markings have appeared in the area around Stonehenge, and also Silbury Hill, which is the oldest and the largest man-made mound in all of Europe. In fact, one of the most remarkable agriglyphs ever found appeared with its axis pointing directly towards Silbury Hill. Since we know that Stonehenge and Silbury Hill were the works of an ancient culture with a surprising knowledge of astronomy, we may wonder if whoever is making these symbols in the crops in this area didn't give them this knowledge thousands of years ago.
We might also wonder if perhaps they're not trying to give us additional knowledge today. Professor Gerald Hawkins, working with this design, discovered significant mathematical equations pertaining to diatonic ratios.
Around about 1990, Professor Gerald Hawkins in Washington, who works with pure mathematics, looked at the crop circle patterns, realized that there was a certain correspondence in their designs. And by looking closely at them, he realized that there were a number of new mathematical theorems which could be extracted from the designs. Now, these theorems are not found in any of the treatises of mathematics in any book around the world. But further to that, he also discovered a fifth theorem, a general one from which all the other ones could be extracted. As soon as he discovered that, as a matter of coincidence, the crop circle popped up in the fields near Lichfield, not too far from here, which actually showed the actual encoding of the fifth theorem, almost as if the circle makers were almost listening in on his own particular work.
But if it is all about mathematics, shouldn't it have a practical side? Some way to use the information for everyone's benefit? Dr. Daniel Ward of New Energy Physics thinks it does.
New energy physics is really about the physics of a new energy product. In other words, we're looking for an energy source that does not require any kind of fuel. Now, one of the things we've discovered is that in the process of putting one of these devices together, we've discovered that some of our circuit designs have much more interesting effects if, in fact, we use circuit designs that are based on the geometry in crop circles.
Could it be that the circle makers are really trying to help us? And that the world in general, and England in particular, has been the unwitting host to extraterrestrial forces throughout its history? If so, it might explain one very interesting coincidence. In the region of the June 1991 sighting of the golden balls in the sky, there are numerous hills that still carry the names they were given hundreds of years ago. Is it significant that one of those hills was long ago named Golden Ball Hill?
I believe there is an intelligence behind this phenomenon. I believe they show themselves in a universal, multidisciplinary method of symbolism.
Well, I think they're trying to communicate with us in terms of circles rather than some more advanced method, in that it sort of levels the playing field and everyone gets the same message, whether they're a scientist or a 10-year-old child.
It is possible that someone has been trying to contact us for a long, long time, but that we haven't understood how to receive this message. I believe the crop markings are indeed messages, but not perhaps letters or words as we might think of them. I believe they are messages to the subconscious mind, a reminder of some deeply hidden part of ourselves that knows we are just one of many intelligent races in the universe.
But perhaps there is more than just one explanation. John Eric Beckjord has decoded this and other circles according to a 4,000-year-old Norse language called Tifinagh. According to Beckjord, this glyph means This is the place of the serpent or devil, which by itself doesn't appear to mean much, but when taken together with other agroglyphs in the same area and translated according to the same ancient language, Beckyard tells us it might have been an alien warning against the upcoming war in Kuwait.
I'm convinced that the crop circles are some sort of communication from a prodigious consciousness or group of consciousnesses which have an agenda relating to humanity on the planet.
These extraterrestrials have been manipulating life on this planet for eons.
The crop circle makers are trying to convey a number of different things to us. Initially, some 10 years ago, they were talking about themselves, who they were, where they came from, their relation to humanity. Now I think they're laying down other laws, other ideas, which we can use for our own benefit. And this is through symbolism and through sacred geometry, through mathematics and physics.
If these are being formed by extraterrestrials, I guess we should at least be comforted in the fact that they have attempted at communication.
If these are communiques, what is the message? Aren't the governments of the world telling us all we need to know? Are we only now deciphering what may be a centuries-old warning?
As the crop circles increase in complexity and in size, in scale, as the whole thing evolves, at some point, perhaps the creators will make themselves known.
On the other hand, can we be certain that they haven't already revealed themselves to us in ways we are only beginning to understand?
The meanings of crop circles are many and varied, and this is one of the wonderful things about this subject, that it seems to me as though it's not targeted at just one particular group of people. A scientist will see a scientific symbolism in it. A theologian will see a theology symbolism in it. Celtic, astronomical, astrological, different symbols. And it's very, very beautiful because it brings people of all different disciplines together. And I think this is one of the wonders of this crop circle phenomenon.
Today, the formations are no longer confined to any one nation, to cereal crops, or to circular patterns. They have appeared in rice paddies, in conifer stands, and in the snowy mountains of Turkey. Some forms have extended 150 meters and more across. And yet, for all their numbers and global uniformity, all we can really say for certain is that they contain undeniable evidence of intelligent design.